Okay, welcome to part 5 of the Delorean build. I think this is going to be a bit of a fiddly one. We've got all sorts of different screws included in the kit. We've got AM, BM, EM, AP, CM, CP screws, all sorts of different sizes. So just be aware which screws you're using. We're doing the left front suspension. These parts, they're metal, so they look to be pretty good quality. And the first thing we've got to do is assemble the bottom arm onto the upright. So let's have a look at that. Now it wants us to use some AM screws for the first bit. Let's get those out. You only need 2 and they've supplied 3, which is very nice of them. They're very good at supplying extra screws, eaglemoss, I'll give them that. Right, this is going to be a little bit fiddly, I think. Oh yes it is. I thought this was going to be a fiddly build when I first saw it. I think the best method is probably if you get the screw on the end of your screwdriver first. And again, these screws are very small. Okay, so we can get that in there. Oops. Try that again. These are the AM screws. There we go. They're quite a tight fit actually, it's almost as if they're cutting their own thread. Now I don't want to fully tighten these all the way, because if you do tighten them all the way then the suspension arm can't move. And like I say, they are pretty stiff going into the holes. I presume they're supposed to be like that. Let's do the other side. I think I'll start with a screw on the end of the screwdriver again. It's best to try and get the hole aligned. I always go quiet when I'm concentrating, and this is one of those jobs where you've really got to concentrate on what you're doing. Let's get the screw on the end of the screwdriver again. It's yet another job where you need 4 pairs of hands to just hold everything aligned. Oh, there we go, that's got it. It's starting to bite now. But it really feels like the bottom arm doesn't have a thread in it, and as you're tightening the screw up you're actually sort of cutting your own thread into the component. Like I say, I'm going to tighten these screws part of the way, but I'm not going to tighten them too much, because this part's got to move if you want your suspension to work. It also slides up and down, interestingly enough. That's something that on a real car it wouldn't do, but there's obviously supposed to be some movement in that joint. Do them a little more. Right. Just a little tweak on that one. Right, I think that'll do. There we are. So not only is it free to move that way, but there's some up and down movement on the joint as well. I'll just see if I can focus the camera a bit better. There we go. Yeah, as you can see, you've got up and down movement of the suspension, and you've got movement in the joint that way as well. Alright, I think that's what they're after. Right, the next part is part 5D, which goes through there. That's sort of the centre of the shock absorber. And we're using BM screws for this one. Let's get that extra AM screw out of the way. Right, BM. BM screws are slightly larger, and you're putting the suspension upright in place, like so. Alright. Again, it's a bit tricky to line up, this is. You've just got to hold it in the right place, and then whack the screw in. Ah, alright, I see. You've got to make sure that it's centralised on the screw as you're putting it in. It is very fiddly, this. Right, that has gripped it, but it looks a bit cross-threaded to me, so I'm going to do that again. These screws are of course very small, and if you get them in cross-threaded, they're very easy to strip. Right, that looks a bit better. That looks a bit straighter. So we'll use another BM screw in the other side. That's looking better. Like I say, you really need somebody with very small fingers to do this. There we go, they're going in nicely now. And again, do the screws reasonably tight, but do them so there's still some movement on there. That part of the suspension's got to move. Yeah, let's give them another little nip. There we are. That's still flexible. Okay. So we're at that stage now. There we go. Now, what's next? The next stage is putting on part 5E, which is a spring, suspension spring there. This spring is actually quite strong if you feel it between your fingers, and that's quite heavy as well. You heard the noise it made when it fell, and that's quite a big chunk of metal. And that spring's quite stiff. So we'll put the spring over there, and that will go under there. Well, it should do. And then, you know, there's actually quite some force in that spring. There's actually quite some pressure there. You really have to compress the suspension. Right, we're going to use, what screw are we going to use? An EM screw. Right, And no surprise, the EM screw is quite a big one. I can't believe how firm that suspension is. It really just takes some force to compress it. Right. What I'll do is I'll get the EM screw on the end of my driver first, and then I'll try and that is as I said, that's quite a powerful spring. It's almost like a real car. You almost need a spring compressor to do this. Right, and that does work. You see the suspension moving there. But I'm amazed at the tension of that spring. It's really quite a powerful thing. Just want to make sure that EM screw is nipped up properly, because it's holding back quite a bit of force from that spring. Right, so we've got that, and it does work. It is working suspension. Yeah, right. I can't resist just giving that top one another little nip. That's a very important screw, that one. You don't want that one pinging off. Right, okay, right, happy with that. Right, that's step 4 done. Right, step 5 is we're going to be putting on the top wishbone, which is, what do they call it, part 5C, which goes there. And we'll be using, we'll be using the CM screws for this top bit. These are the CM screws. They're quite long, actually. Having said they're quite long, I hope they're long enough, because they've got to go in a fair way. They've got to go through the wishbone and into the top of the suspension there. There we go. I think this is very very accurate as far as the real car is concerned. I think the real car has wishbone suspension very much like this. I think this is quite an accurate representation of the DeLorean's real suspension. Right. Have I got that hole aligned? It needs a bit of concentration, this one, I think. Yeah, I think that's going in. I've actually got 2 DeLorean screwdrivers. I bought 2 copies of the first kit, and the heads on them just seem to be slightly different, and they seem to work. The screwdrivers work slightly better on different screws. Okay, that's quite stiff, that. I don't know if you can see it on the camera. Let's see if we can get a good shot of this. But if you look, there's a tiny gap just sort of in there between the sort of main assembly and the wishbone, and I think you can just see there's a chink of light at one end, but it is actually fouling on the casing at the top end, so it is working, but it's not really a terribly good fit. That it's making suspension a bit stiff. I'd say it is functioning, but it's not ideal. I think that could have been manufactured slightly better. Okay, right. I'm not going to do them up too tight because I don't want the suspension to go stiff. That's what you want. You want the top wishbone to be movable, like that. Okay. So we're up to there. Right, what's next? Right, we're fitting the upright now. Or to give it its correct name, it's a swivel hub, but they don't call it that in the book. Alright, now it's important we get this the right way up. So it's going to go on that way. Like so. And we're going to be using, DM screws. Get the DM screws ready. Again, this supplied 4 DM screws, so I've got plenty of those. Just check which way around it's going. It's going to be that way, right? I'll put the screw in the top first and see if that's a better way of doing it. This is another one of those jobs where I wish I had smaller, thinner fingers. But, that's not the case. Okay, let's try it like that. Just going to get it to nip in. There we go. And just get one to nip in the bottom as well. If anybody thinks that model making isn't challenging, they really need to have a go at doing this. This is quite a fiddly assembly. Okay, I've just got those just nipped in. You probably can't see it on camera, but there is a little L on there for left. Alright, let's see if we can get these tightened up. Okay, that's going in. Again, the thread on this does seem to be rather tight, which always worries me. But they do seem to be going in okay, but you do seem to have to use quite a bit of force to get them in. A bit more. People have been saying on the forums, you know, how tight should I do these and how far should this screw in. I think you just got to use your own judgment and your own common sense, and don't over tighten anything, and just make sure that all the joints that are supposed to move can move. Like this top one, for instance, this is that's quite tight in the thread. Everything's working properly. See, the front swivel hub is moving freely there. I would like to just get that top screw. I'd just like to get that in a bit further. That's in about another half turn. Yeah, I think that'll do. And as you can see, the front swivel hub still moves, which is good. That's what we want. Okay, what's next? Right, 5H and 5L. Oh, I've been dreading these. It's a tiny little. That's 5H, and there's a tiny little spring. So we've got 5H and the tiny little spring, which I hope I won't lose, and we use a DP screw. That's it. Another type of screw. And we're going to be putting it into the disc brake assembly. So we've got disc brake that way around, and we put a little spring in there. And that goes in there with DP screw. I'm not sure what this little thing's for. I don't know if it's a bump stop for the suspension or it's turning. There we go, that's going in now. There we go, that's got it. Okay, I think that's it. I'm not sure what the purpose of that is. I think it's a bump stop, just from when the suspension, the steering reaches the end of its trough. I think, I'm not certain. Right, so that's in there. Okay. Let's turn the page. I think we're on the home stretch now. Yeah, we're just going to put the brake caliper onto the back of the disc brake. And that's an AP screw. To open another bag. I don't believe how many different types of screw we're using today. Okay, AP screw to hold the caliper in place. This is quite a small little fellow, this one. Right, okay. Right, that's the brake caliper in position, and now we just need a DM screw. To hold the whole thing together. That's a DM. That does actually hold in place on the magnet now. So we've just got to align that up with the hole there and slip a DM screw through there. Again, that's quite tight on the threads. I'm having to use quite a bit of force to get that in. Now I don't know if that screw's supposed to go all the way in, or I don't think it's supposed to go all the way through the casting. I think it will bottom out. Right, I think that's it. Okay, so that will plop down for when the car is in flying mode, and that clips up on the magnet, sort of for normal driving, if you like. And that is that's the end of issue 5. That's I must admit that's been quite fiddly. I think some of the screws have been a bit tight, because I think what they've done is, particularly with these top ones here and those, they've spray painted the metal parts, and I think some of the paint has got into the screw threads, so when you're screwing the screws in, they are quite tight, because obviously you've got paint in the threads. But try not to use too much force, and that's what you should end up with. The steering will obviously work in that direction, and it should fold down like that as well, and then the magnet will hold it in place. And there we go, that is the left hand front suspension done. It is quite fiddly, but there we go. That's the finished item, and I will see you again for part 6, which I believe is the right hand front suspension, which will just be a mirror image of this. So thanks for watching, and I'll